welcome back to the podcast. It's always a pleasure to have you with us, John.
Yes, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Tayeb.
I'm so excited to dive into the next episode. And I would like to start by asking how the new administration under Trump deal with Middle East issues and conflicts. Any new policies towards the Middle East?
Yeah, I would like to preface this discussion with what is happening in the State Department and how it's affecting the Middle East and Africa and the rest of the world. The State Department, since 1976, I believe, has produced what's known as the Country Reports on Human Rights Practices. And the Trump administration has been slashing the annual publication by cutting out sections on human rights, ironically. And so they're cutting out sections on the rights of women, the disabled, gender minority community, and gender-based violence, cruel and harsh prison conditions, government corruption, restriction on the political process. And so it's hypocrisy. It's really shocking that the nation that initiated this human rights report, now under the Trump administration, has been censoring and cutting out the reports on human rights. And so under Secretary Rubio, Marco Rubio, the State Department will no longer call governments out for such things as denying freedom of movement and peaceful assembly. And it won't condemn retaining political prisoners, due process or restrictions. It won't report on free and fair elections. It is forcibly returning refugees and asylum seekers to their home countries. Our nation is doing that, the USA. So of course they don't want to report on that. They're not reporting on how these returning migrants are facing torture and prosecution or persecution. Rubio won't even have a press conference to announce the new report. So this is the only time this ever happened was under Trump's first administration. And human rights defender organizations such as Amnesty International say the cuts amount to an American retreat from its position as the world's human rights watchdog. So what's the impact of that? It means that nations that are not worried about human rights, now they have free reign to do all sorts of human rights abuses because it won't be reported and they won't face implications on their on the allocations that the U.S. gives to them. So this is setting the stage for a whole new landscape in human rights and rights in general.
Do you mean by that the State Department role has been diminished?
Yes, the State Department and the USA used to be a leader in fighting human rights abuses for many years, starting with the Jimmy Carter administration, really. And I worked in publishing a sister publication, which is the report on human trafficking, for 2 years. This is very important to understand what's going on in every country. These are reports that are available to the world, to the public. And so we need to know, everybody needs to know what's going on in the country relating to human beings. And now this information is being cut out, culled, censored, very highly regulated, because Trump, of course, is embarrassed about how he's been abusing migrants, sending them to Panama and sending people with no due process to terrible prisons like in El Salvador. So this is what's happening, and this affects everybody in the world who is concerned about their safety and their integrity.
So what about these press conferences held by the State Department from time to time and the briefing, which we have seen a lot of times? Do you mean that these are ineffective briefings and it means nothing to the international audience?
Well, the Trump administration is very careful about controlling the message. And so if they don't like the question, they do a number of things. First, they will stonewall and not answer the question, or they will give a roundabout answer, not direct. And then they will, whoever is the press secretary or even Trump himself, will criticize the person asking the question. And then they will say, well, you're not welcome to our press conference anymore. So this has had a terrible dampening effect. It's putting water on the energy of the media. And so this is a whole different experience for people of the USA who are very proud of the freedom that we have, the freedom of the press and freedom of expression. It's aligning the USA with other dictators such as Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela, or the Castro regime when it was in power in Cuba. Even Saddam Hussein did the same thing. Anybody in the press who questioned Saddam Hussein in the wrong way would be put in prison or even killed. So where is the USA heading is the question.
Yeah, right. So now you can dive into the impact of the Trump administration on the Middle East.
Well, in the geopolitical scene, the landscape, the Middle East is still very unstable. Many nations are continuing to experience instability. Major changes in Syria and in Lebanon. And Israel's unjust treatment of the Palestinian people continues to anger many people of the Arab world who consider the Palestinians their brothers and sisters. So overall, the geopolitical landscape is very fluid. Many states, many Arab states have governments which are somewhat unpopular, and terrorist organizations are still quite active in many countries. The United States maintains a considerable military presence in the Middle East, of course. Forces in more than a dozen countries and in ships in the region's waters. And that presence expanded even before Trump administration, and now it's even greater as they continue to deter and defeat threats from Iran, Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah is still active in Lebanon. The Houthis are still very active, several Iraq and Syria-based militant groups. So the USA has a strong presence of ships and military presence ready to take action. For example, last month in 2025, March 2025, the U.S. Central Forces Command launched an offensive airstrike on Houthi-controlled territories in Yemen from warships, which were, I believe, coming from the Red Sea. And since the October 2023 outbreak of war between Hamas and Israel, the U.S. forces in the Middle East have been increasingly targeted by some of these groups. And so there have had to be counterstrikes. So we're continuing to see this high energy, a lot of friction in the Middle East. So we can talk about the Israel-Palestine dynamic if you want.
Yeah, right. We need to talk about that. But I have a question about the resilience of Hamas despite all these attacks and cut off the supplies and blockade. How would you assess that resilience of Hamas? And are Israelis be able to control these? And
yeah, that's a good question. Well, I'm going to start by saying that a well-known reporter or columnist named Thomas Friedman said something that I heard on a radio show, on a TV show about 25 years ago. He said, humiliation is the single most underestimated force in international relations today. So the Palestinians have been humiliated since 1946. In 1948, the founding of Israel. In 1946, the bombing of the King David Hotel. The Palestinians are rebelling and resisting against this humiliation and these atrocities committed on a daily basis by Israel and the IDF. So what's going on with Hamas? There's been a wave of protests in recent weeks in Gaza, and this was very surprising to a lot of people because before that Hamas was very careful in controlling these protests, but it happened. And what happened to the protests? They have somewhat petered out. They've gone away to a certain extent. Why? Because the Gazans are continuing to try and survive. They're besieged. Their residents are searching for food. They have little protection. They're fleeing Israeli strikes and evacuation orders. So Gazans say that some Palestinians who protested or participating even on social media about the protests got threatening calls from Hamas's internal security. So Hamas is continuing its very strong presence in Gaza. And even several Palestinian journalists told the Washington Post that they felt pressured not to cover the demonstrations because it might distract from the war. But so Hamas has proven to be incredibly resilient, and I'm sure even Israel, the intelligence, is surprised by that. But you have to understand the human dynamic. Humans who have been suffering for decades, they're not going to just give up willingly. They're going to continue to fight to the last person, especially since there's been such a horrific toll. More than 50,000 Palestinians, mainly in Gaza, have been killed. A large number of children, a large number of women. These are not military conflict targets. So what happened to the ceasefire is the question. Well, it's supposed to go into phase 2, but it can't do that because Hamas is rejecting Israel's latest ceasefire proposals. Hamas says that these are impossible conditions, and they won't accept a deal without guarantee of the end of the Gaza war or full withdrawal of the Israeli troops. So they've survived, now 18 months of war with Israel. It's been the most deadly and destructive in recent memory. Hamas remains firmly in control of the territory. The territory is like an apocalyptic scene, a landscape. Everything has been leveled. It looks like Dresden after World War II. Humanitarian aid, food has been virtually stopped again. So it seems that Israel is intent on enacting the liquidation of the ghetto of Gaza the way the Germans were intent on liquidating all of the Jewish ghettos. It's horribly reminiscent of that. The people of Gaza are desperate, and Israel has weaponized humanitarian aid and entry of food, fuel, and medicine and other essential supplies.
What about the conflict on the borders with Gaza? Do you think it might be expanded to include countries in the region? Like Egypt?
Oh, well, Egypt right now is doing what it's been doing since the peace accords under Jimmy Carter. They're maintaining pretty much a status quo, hands off, because they don't want their country to be destabilized. But of course, it spread once October 7th happened and the Hamas revenge attack happened in Israel. The spreading happened to in Lebanon with Hezbollah. Of course, the Houthis in Yemen got into the fight, and so Israel's inability to prepare for this attack and to understand the dynamics, the social dynamics of human beings, how they will do whatever it takes to stop the suffering. Israel's inability has caused the world to become extremely fractioned and extremely warlike in many respects. It's created such cataclysm all because of Israel's inability to understand the human dimensions of oppression.
Mhm.
So we can...
You talk about this inability. Has it anything to do with the internal affairs, the unrest inside the Israel?
Well, Netanyahu continues to cling to power in spite of his many legal problems. The government continues to be very radicalized in a number of ways over what's been going on. The benefit to Netanyahu of Hamas's power is that every time there's a rocket attack, it strengthens his power because Israelis in general don't want to withdraw from any conflict when it's active. So there have been a lot of challenges to Netanyahu's power. Netanyahu fired the head of Shin Bet. The Israeli public is dissenting over the hostages since October 7th. And Netanyahu's incredible legal troubles continue to color the situation. Bibi Netanyahu is undermining the authority of the judicial sector as well. And of course, we have to remember there are still probably 60 hostages or some corpses in Gaza. So this has caused an incredible strain on the Israeli public in the public forum. But Israel keeps relaunching its ground and air campaign.
Yeah, John, some of my audience actually reach out to me with some questions, like they want you to talk about the Abraham Accord. We know that these accords or the plans was initiated by Trump in his first term, and he's thinking to expand these deals once again when everything is settled down. So, as a diplomat, what do you think about these accords?
Yeah, I was in a section of the State Department at the time. I was actually the desk officer for Morocco at the time that the Abraham Accords were proclaimed. And a lot of the aspects of the Abraham Accord caught us off guard. We weren't prepared for a lot of these concessions that were made to Israel. Now, why is Trump conceding to Israel in so many areas? It goes back to the whole racist perspective of the Trump administration and the Make America Great Again. People who are darker, people who are not European descent are considered less than. And so Israel, because of the Ashkenazi Jews, they are mainly European descent. And so this has a perception, the optics are that if we're protecting Israel, we're protecting people of lighter skin. This is not just my opinion. So Trump, in his first term, he proclaimed a lot of aspects of the Abraham Accords, which were, in essence, doing everything possible to give Israel carte blanche to go ahead with the continued oppression of Palestinians and people of Arab descent. For example, the moving of the embassy in Israel to Jerusalem was something that was wished for a long time by many Christian nationalists in the USA. And so this was something that Trump was happy to do because a lot of his base are Christian nationalists, Christian extremists, evangelicals. So there's even a religious aspect to the Abraham Accords. Trump conceded the sovereignty of an entire country, Western Sahara, giving the country over to a neocolonialist Morocco. And this was terribly tragic to the hundreds of thousands of Sahrawis in Western Sahara. who continue to live in wretched conditions in Algeria, in camps, refugee camps. And this caught us in the Morocco desk off guard. We were very surprised, and we had to deal with this. The humanitarian aspects of the Abraham Accord are something that a lot of people don't realize. But yes, it's trying to usurp and change the dynamics so that Israel is not alone against the Arab world. And so it's appeasing many governments, giving them a lot of what they want in order to look friendly toward Israel, even countries that were condemning Israel. So the global, the macro picture of this, we have to look at and consider what Trump's mentality is. Who are the people empowering Trump? And to a great extent, they are Christian nationalists who believe that the future of Israel has something to do with the future of humanity from a religious perspective.
So if we compare him with a former president, do you think Trump has more support to Israel, like without any limits?
Well, Trump's support to Israel knows no bounds. Whatever Israel wants, Israel gets. Military aid, money, verbal support at every press conference. And this has a lot to do with the Israeli lobby in the USA, AIPAC, and all these other Israeli lobbies.
So regardless who is in the White House?
Well, no, because the Biden administration pushed back on Israel at the beginning of the war after October 7th. For example, the Biden administration saw that many of the bombs that were being dropped on innocent civilians in Gaza were the worst, the most devastating bombs. So the Biden administration stopped exporting a lot of these bombs. And of course, Israel and all the Israeli supporters in the USA said, oh, this is terrible, we can't do that, it's anti-Semitic that we're stopping the bombing of innocent civilians. And after a few weeks, Biden relented and gave more support. Many progressives in the USA, many Democratic Party people were very disappointed in Biden for supporting Israel against the innocent civilians of Gaza. And they believed that what Biden did was unforgivable. And this is actually one reason why Biden lost, because only 3 million votes separated Biden and Trump in the last election, in the popular vote. Many Arab Americans refused to support Biden or Harris. And then Harris, when she ran with her vice president, they refused to support because they saw what was happening to their brothers and sisters in Palestine. So what President Biden did actually was self-defeating. The Democratic Party shot itself in the foot by kowtowing, by agreeing with so much of what Israel wants, and by not pushing back against the genocide which has been occurring in Gaza for the past 18 months.
But at least during the former president term, we haven't seen like suppression of voices that support Hamas or Palestine cause, like what's like now.
No.
The freedom of expression.
Absolutely. And since Trump came online, the freedom of expression, not only in the street, but on U.S. college campuses, has been severely limited. Anybody who is protesting against the atrocities committed by Israel is in trouble. If they're students, they lose their student status. If they're studying in the USA from another country, they are deported. Their visas are wholesale. The visas have been completely. So this has had a devastating effect. The USA has its constitutional values of freedom of expression, And these are being totally ignored by Trump and his administration, just as in his first term, when he suppressed demonstrations even in Washington, D.C., by calling out the military to tear gas demonstrators right in front of the White House. So the whole character of the United States of America has been tarnished, and it will take many years for the rest of the world to recover from this and to hold the USA in the high esteem that it had prior to Trump.
Okay, so before we end this episode, would you like to add any further elaboration about the U.S. Middle East relationship?
Well, the USA continues to interact with other states in the Middle East, just as they do with the rest of the world. And so there have been some positive movements in the Middle East, specifically with the removal of the tyrant Bashar al-Assad, and the Syrian people are recovering from those decades, generations of terrorist activity by the Assad regime and his family. Iran continues to be a major focus of the Trump administration, and Trump administration is moving in tandem with Israel government in keeping close eye on Iran, making sure that they cannot continue advancing in the road of producing nuclear weapons. So this is a possible conflict point if anything happens. The USA continues to provide a lot of support to Egypt, as it always has, even though the Sisi government is having its own challenges. So I think we can look at the whole world as it's been impacted by this new administration. It's been epic. It's been unprecedented, and it's shocking to many Americans like me who value our American values of independence, freedom, and civil rights.
Good. Okay. I think with this final question, we have come to the end of our episode of today. And thank you so much, John. And we look forward to meeting you again in the near future.
It's been my pleasure, Tayeb. شكرا جزيلا لك وبارك الله فيك.
Thank you. Bye bye.
مع السلامة.